Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 56 for the 13th of November 2009. Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th. Okay, that's enough of that. On this week's show we have a special interview conducted by Kylie Sturgess in Perth with Tom Perry and Ricky Burns. Now, Tom Perry and Ricky Burns are the wonderful people who did the photographic session with Dr. Rachie and myself a couple of months ago. Fantastically good fun, very generous of them, but they have a very interesting insight into skepticism and their role in the media. That's coming up in a moment. After that, we have a report from the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival that was here in Sydney, where Joanne, Benhamu and myself and some other skeptics go along. So we have a little introduction, then we get into Joe's report about the mind-body wallet, as we call it, followed by our wrap-up, and you'll hear me giving some straightforward advice to some of the people there. After that, we have Dr. Rachie reports and her interview with Dr. Alex Loukas about hookworms. Oh, yes. And then after that, we have the think tank, the good old think tank. So, sit back, grab a nice glass of apple and raspberry cordial. Why not? That's what I've got right here. And enjoy this week's episode of The Skeptic Zone.
I'm Kylie Sturgess, and I'm talking to Ricky Burns and Tom Perry. When Skeptic Zone's Richard and Dr. Rachie came to Perth, a special photo shoot was donated by both Ricky and Tom, who work in advertising. You can see the photos and the behind-the-scenes video on the Skeptic Zone Facebook page. Their generosity and talents led us to keep in touch, so I'm talking to them about creativity, their views on how skeptics can tap into mainstream media, and the marketing of skepticism.
I'm a photographer from Western Australia. I work predominantly in advertising.
You've got good hair.
I've got great hair.
You've got fantastic
I've got great hair, and I'm wearing a Skeptic's Guide to the Universe t-shirt.
Yes, and the person who's responsible for the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe t-shirt is sitting next to me as well. Hello, Ricky.
Hi, Kylie.
Tell us about yourself.
I'm an art director. I work in an advertising agency. Now you say something about my hair.
You have a lovely bow in your hair.
Thank you.
So I'm here with two people who are in an arts-related field in one way or another. Why? Because you're both skeptics, aren't you? Or consider yourself to be skeptics.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I think I'm a skeptic purely because I'm naturally inclined that way. I have a natural inclination to question what is put in front of me and not just blindly accept it. And through being like that for most of my life, I found the movement and guess adopted the word, although I'd never really used the word before, and it's just become appropriate, and I got particularly excited and enthused, and I enjoy being involved.
Yeah. What do you think about the name Skeptic?
I don't think there's a problem with the name. I think there might be a slight perception problem with people that don't understand what it is, but I don't think we can just go and put some kind of fake name on it or try and create a brand around it which doesn't explain what it really is.
I think there's a negative connotation to the word in the general public, that when you explain what it is to people is shed very, very quickly. I think with the movement getting bigger and bigger all the time and more people having their ears pricked up to it, that will slowly become less and less. And, you know, I really enjoy the word. I think it's an appropriate word. And over time, I think it's a perfect piece of branding. It's just all the other things that will slowly come along to be associated with that, which is usually due to media exposure.
What are some of the big influences on you two in terms of embracing skepticism?
I guess my journey I'm an atheist, very much an atheist, and a lot of people I find become skeptics and then become atheists. I did it the other way round. My parents are both militant atheists due to reasons of their upbringing in the East End of London and all sorts of reasons, but I was always brought up to not only question, but really quite aggressively question religious dogma. And I guess when that really became a form of scepticism was I was living in a suburb of Perth with a friend, and the Jehovah's Witnesses came and knocked on the door, and he threw a bunch of arguments at me trying to be persuasive and all nice, and I'm standing there smiling, and I systematically pulled apart, very rationally, very friendly, pulled apart each of his arguments, and he went, "Okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks." 2 weeks he showed up again with another set of arguments. Fish eyes, all the standard things, arguing against evolution and intelligent design, all sorts of things. And I picked each one of those off based on the knowledge that I naturally acquire because I'm interested in science. Even though I'm an artist, I read a lot about science, and I watch as many documentaries as I can squeeze into my vision. And it got me to starting to research things. So he would occasionally come with a question that I didn't have a satisfactory answer for. So he'd go away to get more questions. I'd go away and research the answer to his question. And this probably happened 8 or 9 times over the space of about 6 months. And
you would have become quite good friends by the end of this, it seems.
Well, I guess it was a begrudging respect between the two of us. And eventually one day he showed up with a woman who must have been in her mid-90s, and she was... They bring these people around, I assume, to gain sympathy from the people whose doors they're knocking on. And she was blind, and she was shaking, and she was in bad shape. And I just thought, for a man trying to sell religion, it was the most amoral, horrific thing to do. And I just lost my rag at him. And I told him at that point what I thought of him, and he never came back again. But, I mean, by that point, I was already really into it. So I sit and I wait for people to knock on my door. I mean, thankfully, I work for myself, so I work from home. So I'm there when they knock on my door, and God, I enjoy it.
And if he's not home, I run and hide under the bed.
You're not one for confrontation.
Yeah. So what is your approach? What led you towards this path? Did you have a similar sort of upbringing, do you think?
No, definitely not. My dad has always been really into science. My mum, not so much. She works at a Steiner school, and she's into a lot of hippie kind of things. New Age, exactly. So every time my 3 brothers and I go home and have dinner, we all start pulling apart the things that she says, which is awful.
Did you go to the Steiner school yourself? I'm a little familiar with Waldorf Steiner's methodology, yeah.
It definitely does, and I think that her school is not too insane. Yeah. No, I went to a normal school. My parents were always pseudo-religious, kind of wanted me to go to Sunday school, but I wouldn't leave the house without Mum, so I didn't. Yeah, so I was just kind of brought up with, his religion, you can take it or leave it, and 3 of my brothers and I all turned out quite sceptical and atheist.
So why choose the art direction rather than science, since obviously had a bit of an impact upon your lives? You mentioned you yourself had a career in architecture for a while.
Yeah, I think the way my brain is wired, I have a natural inclination to do things that are 50-50 technical and artistic. And I think both Ricki and I, having a technical inclination and a scientific inclination, both of our jobs are artistic, but at the same time...
It's not fine art.
It's not fine art, but our days are filled with, here is a problem, here's... and then you need to come up with a bunch of technical solutions to it, and then those solutions then need to be artistic solutions as well. So it's a very 50-50 field. We have an arts application, but we have a sort of, problem-solving approach, and I think it's something that fits very well with the sceptical thing.
That was an excellent answer.
Thank you, Ricki.
All right.
There's quite a bit of psychology involved as well, and that was one of the things that came to mind when I was watching the two of you talking about your work when we were doing the Skeptic Zone photo shoot, which is where, in fact, we met. How about we talk about the Skeptic Zone photo shoot first, and then I'll start asking you about the psychology behind marketing. How did all of us meet?
I can answer that in one very dorky phrase. We're kind of fan kids, really.
Woohoo! Richard, we have fans. It finally worked. It's not just me downloading the podcast half a dozen times and bumping up the score on iTunes. There you go. I've got evidence, finally.
I think at some point we discovered that we can use the skills that we've got to meet people that we want to meet. and so we've been doing it ever since.
Hey, that's been my goal ever since the beginning, I've got to tell you, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're fan kids. We really desperately, we're very passionate about skepticism. I guess that's inspired by how passionately angry we get when the pseudoscience takes over and people go down that path. But we just really wanted to be involved, and we heard about, Skeptic Zone guys coming over, and we just thought, we've got to do this. Yeah. And I mean, I'm always a sucker for doing a hilarious themed shoot. Thankfully, in my work, I get paid for one thing enough to go and do work at the same time where I'm not getting paid. And as long as I'm producing photos, I don't really care. Yeah. And we just thought we could have a bit of fun, not take it all too seriously, come up with some ideas, and it was a really great day, and I think the photos turned out pretty good. There are still a few that I haven't done the post-production on, so I think I'll knock them out in the not-too-distant future.
Brilliant. Ready for the next convention. That'd be great.
Absolutely. I can't wait. We're busting to go.
Yeah. So just for those people who might not have seen these photos, they are on Facebook. We did have links to them on the Skeptic Zone website, and there's even a behind-the-scenes video with me running around like a nutter with my camera, getting Richard playing George Raab songs all the way through the photo shoot. What was involved?
Well, the ideas that we settled on, we had quite a lot of ideas, but I think it was really constrained by the time we had with them, because they were, flying over from Sydney and stuff. So
Richard was ill as well, which was terrible. We'll make him do all kinds of things.
Yeah, we make Richard do all kinds. Don't feel guilty. He does. He loves it, don't you?
He was a trooper. So I mean, Richard's thing. He loves bending his spoons. And I enjoy the Uri Geller saga, the legacy, let's call it. So we got a picture of, I guess, Richard being frustrated trying to eat soup. And every time he picks up a spoon and takes a scoop of soup, he spills it down his front because it magically bends in his magical hands. And we got Dr. Rachie in a tarot reading situation, holding up a $sign card. Yeah. Which I thought was looking into a crystal ball and staring deep into your soul.
And do you remember the name that we ended up giving her?
Madam Nom Nom.
Yes. Absolutely inspired, I thought. Yeah.
We've got some great ear candle ones, which will come up soon. And we've also got a levitation one with a cactus featuring prominently.
So, yeah, we're, taking on the basic sort of stereotypical... pseudosciences. The ear candles is always, a favourite, something I bring up to people when they ask what a skeptic is. And the levitation is a sight gag, really.
You can't really go wrong with the sight gag, can you?
No, just keep it simple, stupid, really.
So back on the psychology behind it, we end up challenging these things through the photos that you've taken. What are some of the things that you think should be more challenged out there?
Everything.
Particularly, everything? Yeah. What are some of the things that you have come across, perhaps in your careers, that have made you stop and think, I'm part of an industry that is helping promote these sort of things? I mean, you mentioned anger already.
I do get angry, but I guess I get... how's best to explain it? I get frustrated that there are people in this world who don't think critically, who accept everything on face value, and I guess you wouldn't really blame it on advertising as such. You'd blame it on these products are designed from the get-go by the people who are making the money out of them to take advantage of people who simply don't question it. And I find that if you bring up, if you just ask people what they understand about how things work and confront them with that, not give them any facts, just ask them what they know and whether they're happy with what they know about that product informing them enough to spend their hard-earned dollars, then generally they actually find their own way to disproving whatever they're being sold. But I just find it so frustrating that there are these leeches out there, and I'm sure they must know that what they're selling is, snake oil. But it's done in my current one is rapid detox. Yes. Complete bullshit. And there's no two ways about it. There's no basis to understand it at all. Yeah.
So, but I don't think Well, I personally have never really come across something that I've had a problem with selling as such. I know people who have. I know it's an industry where, depending on who your boss is, of course, you don't have to work on things if you don't want to, but there's always going to be someone who will.
Yeah.
And I think public generally approach advertising with a little bit of scepticism, even if they don't realise they're doing it.
We can also have cases, and we discussed this briefly earlier before the interview, where due to marketing, a label might be applied to something which appeals to popular beliefs, say New Age practices, and yet the product itself is fairly benign.
Well, I think the best example of that is Feng Shui.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a crazy spiritual sect type pseudoscience, but from an architectural point of view, which is my background, it's fantastic because if you remove the spiritualist hoo-ha element of it, it's just a basic set of really good common sense rules. For example, I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a rule that says don't be able to see out the back door of your house as soon as you walk in the front door of your house because the spiritual energy will drain out and you won't be able to contain it. But basically, it just makes your house feel small. So if you follow that rule, you have a more interesting space in which to live. The other one, and my favourite one, is when you're designing a shop, which I have done, and I took this into account. The first thing that you see and understand when you walk into that shop is the point at which you pay. Because if you walk into a shop and you don't quite know what's going on and you don't know how it works and you don't know where you're going to pay at the end, you get confused and you get stressed and you're less likely to buy something. I mean, I know I've been in shops where I haven't quite known how it's worked and I've ended up just walking out not buying anything, whereas if I understood straight away where I have to pay when I'm leaving, I'm comfortable in my shopping experience. And it's just a really basic rule. They've just tacked a lot of bizarre pseudoscience and spiritualism onto it. It's just a really good set of sensible ideas. But if you just called them sensible ideas, no one would be interested because everybody thinks they're already sensible.
So are there standards and ethics which do apply to these things? Are there certain points that an advertising agency will say, no, we cannot do this?
Oh, of course.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I think it depends on the different agencies, but there are standards which everybody has to adhere to, of course. Especially here in Perth, I don't really see many problems of that nature. Yeah.
Oh, there are legal implications as well. I think someone was, and I have to do a bit more research about this because I don't know how true it is, but the detox type companies are actually being prosecuted. And there are actually been prosecutions as far as I've heard, but they make so much money that you basically take that into account and they still make money despite
Same as the erection
prosecutions. People. Yeah, that was where it came up.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. You know, where some of these companies can make so much money that even if they get a $100,000 fine slapped on them, they're still...
It's in their budget from the beginning.
They just work it into their budgeting and into their accounting. It's the companies that are coming up with these products that are really the moral-less ones.
And it's in the wording as well. We already use the word allegedly, for example. So have you seen the use of weasel words in advertising?
Absolutely. I mean, but I think there is a certain, what Ricky said before, there is a certain amount of natural scepticism that people have towards advertising, and I think that's a really, really healthy thing. I think, you know, there's been whether it's been based on the atrocious programs like A Current Affair and all that sort of thing, which allegedly, you know, whether it's based on that sort of thing or not, there is a natural level of scepticism out there, and I do think most people in the ad industry are generally just given a brief and do their best to sell it. There's not a lot of malice. There is a small group of, I guess, highly paid people who, you know, which there'll be in any industry.
Most of these people do their own advertising.
Speaking of advertising, how could scepticism better advertise itself? Do you two ever come up with ideas that you think to yourself, oh, if they could try this or maybe use this particular slogan, or if we had the opportunity and the budget, we could do X and that would?
I think that's a tricky one. And I guess from a personal background, it's like trying to sell atheism. Yeah. You're trying to sell a point of view, essentially, unless a way of life. And unless you have a product or a church, churches are trying to get bums on seats. You know, and we're not trying to get bums on seats. We're not got anything particular to sell. We're trying to tell people to think critically about everything that's in front of them every day. I think that that's
the interesting thing. Is there a sceptical community out there? I mean, Rikki, we've got Tom sitting here with a shirt that Rikki has designed, the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe shirt. So if people have bought that shirt, we're sitting here with the woman who has designed it, as I said before. So
I think, I guess SGU are a great example. You know, I was reading today that they have 60,000 subscribers for every episode, which is extraordinary. I mean, in the context of 6 billion people in the world, okay, it's not a lot, but it's 60,000 people. And what you need in, I guess, a movement like skepticism is not necessarily a campaign.
It's grassroots.
It's grassroots, it's viral, and it's media coverage. If you make it the done thing to be sceptical, to have a point of view that is critical, not pointlessly critical, but logically critical of everything that is then put in front of them, which is what the daily news should be, but isn't, then, you know, it becomes part of the way we work. And I think in these things there always could be a eureka moment. You know, and I think that, you know, there'll be a phrase that'll come up one day, and I think to bring skepticism in a positive direction, you know, using words that describe it in a positive way. The example we were speaking of earlier is alternative medicine. Yes. Everybody wants an alternative, and everybody wants medicine. So people don't question what that actually means because it's such a weaselly phrase, you know, but it's brilliant. We can take so many lessons from the pseudoscience industries, from the crazy religious side of things, of just looking at them and understanding how they got so popular, how they got so big, why people initially become interested in them when they're full of falsehood and stupidity. I think alternative medicine is just one of the cleverest phrases there is around. Unfortunately, it's on the wrong side. But, you know, if we can all keep our ears pricked, keep thinking about it, then those phrases will come to us as well. And we can put them out there in the media when we have the chance to use them out there in the media, just like alternative medicine use that phrase at every given opportunity. Then, yeah, there will be a swing towards logic.
I think the pseudoscience industry uses celebrity really well. Someone like Jenny McCarthy or Jim Carrey, you know, not getting not getting paid for these things, but they believe it and they go out and espouse it to the public. I think we could really get some people on board who are really charismatic and believe our point of view to get out there a lot more. Like, was it Amanda Peet?
Yes, the actress Amanda Peet, who was speaking out against Jenny McCarthy. We have people like the Mythbusters as well, who turn up with many...
doing a great job.
Yeah.
And I think more people like that need to feel like they're able to step up and say what they believe in, especially somewhere in America, and not be afraid of it.
Yeah, I mean, Rachie laughed before because I pretended to vomit when Jenny McCarthy's name was mentioned, and I think, allegedly, I think that, you know, skepticism has got some great figureheads, but they're figureheads that turn certain people off. I mean, I adore Richard Dawkins, but there's a certain, you know, there are large parts of the community who would probably find him very confronting and just would automatically not listen to anything he said.
Yeah, and the question of the deists out there, or the theists, who want to be able to support critical thinking and yet will draw a line according to where their religious beliefs will be stepped on, but don't want people to be defrauded by paranormalists or pseudoscientific claims. And
I would never speak against what Richard is doing because I think he's a genius. I just think he's wonderful, but as a figurehead, he's not necessarily the most appealing type, you know, person. And I think, I guess what it is, especially with the freaking Jenny McCarthys, idiots like that, you get, it's easy for them to get passionate. It's easy to get passionate about bullshit. because you can essentially back it up with whatever you want, because it's not based on fact anyway.
It's emotion.
It's all emotion.
We're doing it for the kids.
And there's an intentional, in many cases, disconnect between passion and science. And I think people try to step back and remove passion from science, because science essentially in its purest form can't be passionate. It needs to be pure. But I think, and the Mythbusters are great because they get passionate about science, and I think that divide needs to happen where the scientists can stay dispassionate in the activity of science, but we need to be, I mean, I get very excited about listening to science, but I'm not a scientist, you know, and I think that's one of the reasons these celebrities do so well on the pseudoscience side of things. You know, I think something I was thinking earlier today was, you know, incorporating words into skepticism that are liberating and forward-moving, you know, like truth and independence and all those sort of buzzwords that, yeah, there are buzzwords, but that's essentially what we do.
Speaking of buzzwords, TAM Australia is going to become a buzzword.
Woot,
Tom is...
Woot, woot.
So what sort of things are you hoping to get passionate about in terms of TAM Australia? We know that you two will be going. Got any big plans whilst you're there?
Oh, I'll just drink with whoever I can, really. I mean, I'd love to set up a photo shoot, you know, hire out a studio over there, get some themes going. You know, if there's anyone in Sydney who's in the production business or works in, you know, production side of photography or creative ideas, or has a studio that we can use, you know, can source some props for us, and we'll come up with some crazy ideas and do some crazy photo shoots. What was the one I was thinking of today? Oh, yeah, you could do, this was just popped into my head, reenact the Roswell thing, and you could have all the skeptics standing around, and obviously, health permitting, James Randi could be the alien on the table.
We'll and him in later.
We'll Photoshop him in later if he's not there. That's fine. But, you know, just really taking it on, being kind of humorous with it, and giving people something that they can relate to without being too elitist or confronting, I guess.
And I got so excited when I saw Evan's little video that he made talking to me about my T-shirt on YouTube, and picture of Jay wearing my T-shirt, and I would just love to meet these guys and take photos with them. It'd be awesome.
And it looks like that opportunity will be indeed happening. So
congratulations. It's I'm very excited for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for you guys for being a part of it. And thank you very much for talking to me.
Anytime.
Thanks, Kylie.
Thank you.
Good. You can head to Rikki and Tom's websites to see more of their work. Tom Perry's photography is at tpdesign.com.au, and Rikki's work, especially her great t-shirt designs, can be found at rickib.net. Forthcoming news about TAM Australia will be eventually posted on the Australian Skeptics website at skeptics.com.au.
You're listening to The Skeptic Zone. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. When I'm not tuned into The Skeptic Zone, I'm recording the Skeptoid podcast, doing what I can to further knowledge by blasting away the widespread pseudosciences that infect popular culture. I've also compiled a 40-minute educational video on critical thinking called Here Be Dragons at herebedragonsmovie.com. I hope you check those out, and I hope you enjoy The Skeptic Zone.
Well, I've come down to Darling Harbour here in Sydney for the Mind Body Spirit Festival. But as we call it, of course, the Mind Body Wallet. Going to be meeting up with some skeptics today. We're going to be walking through, possibly handing out skeptic challenge cards. $100,000 if you can prove your funny claim, and we'll see if we get kicked out. It's Mind Body Wallet time once again. I'm here with William. G'day, William.
Hello, Richard. How are you going?
Getting back on the show again, William. You're only on last week.
I know. I'm hogging the limelight. It's terrible.
It's terrible. And Richard. Hi, Richard.
G'day, Richard.
G'day. And we're just waiting out the front of the exhibition centre here and looking through the window. What can we see? All sorts of sacred cleansing and, what's Amazonia or something or other. Can't wait to get in. We're just waiting for a few more skeptics to turn up and we'll see what's in store for us. Good old Mind Body Wallet.
It's great. Have you seen the people getting their teeth whitened?
Yeah, just through the other window. These people lying down with their mouths being zapped.
It's so public.
It is.
Exhibitionists, I call them.
Yeah, but with a great smile.
With a beautiful smile and great Simon Cowell-style teeth.
There you go.
But that's with the UV thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, when you've got UV flashing into your teeth for about half an hour, I mean, everything looks white when you look in the mirror anyway.
Look who turned up. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Richard.
It's Skeptic Zone Joe Benhamu, normally from the think tank, of course, and getting injections.
Yes, that's me.
Are you still with us?
I'm still standing, yes. But I'm starting to feel a little bit, I don't know, out of sorts standing here at the moment.
Peering through the door, waiting to see what we're going to be in for.
I don't know, I think, as Richard would see, I'm starting to sweat and hyperventilate as
but
we're
you're doing
preparing
it so
to walk
beautifully.
through the doors. Oh, thank you, Richard.
Let's go. Let's go in.
The biannual Mind Body Wallet Festival wrapped up on Sunday, no doubt leaving in its wake a plethora of satisfied customers. As usual, I noted the dizzying array of lotions, potions, crystals and trinkets, the twang of sitars and flutter of hands waving over those eager to have their chakras aligned or meridians tweaked. Many of the usual suspects were there: live blood analysis, chiropractors assessing spinal alignment, and of course a multitude of psychic readings, even a man who does wax art psychic readings, whatever that may be. I turn a blind eye to the more innocuous offerings at these events, but some scream for attention, not just because of their outlandishness, but because they leap over the boundaries of harmless, kooky fun. I was drawn to a stall representing a dental practice in Sydney. Amongst other things, they remove mercury amalgams, claiming they cause mercury toxicity. They recommend chelation therapy to detoxify and refer to dental interference fields, which seems to be like reflexology for teeth. Suffice to say that a little prodding for further information and the evidence for what they do resulted in my being verbally evicted from the stall, to the repeated cries of "Mercury is a neurotoxin" from the woman running the stall. I spun around to see Australian Skeptics Vice President Richard Saunders chatting to an amiable-looking woman at the stall opposite. She animatedly described how, by waving her hands over your body, she can heal what ails you. How does this incredible technique work, we asked. They claim it goes beyond every other energy healing technique. We have become disconnected from the meridian lines which used to connect us to the entire universe, say the brochures. We connect to unique vibratory levels and frequencies, causing reconnection of DNA strands and reintegration strings, it continues. Oh, hell, just go and watch that woman on YouTube explain the physics of homeopathy and you've got the picture. They claim healings for cancer, paralysis, bone fractures, diabetes and more. Astounded at why they don't have a Nobel Prize for their incredible contribution to science, we asked to see the published research. Oh, it's all in Russian journals. It's being translated. We offered the Australian Skeptics $100,000 challenge. We explained a simple test was all that was needed. They were open to the idea. Her fellow healer asked, "Why do a simple test for such a complex thing? You should do a very complicated test." I looked at Richard despairingly, and we moved on. Another stall was selling something called transfer factors, which they claim will improve your immune system by 437%. Such a precise claim must be backed by data, I thought. Never mind that boosting your immune system is a meaningless marketing term. Transfer factors, they claim, help the immune system recognise harmful elements, change the immune response to suit the occasion, and support immune memory. All things which the immune system is capable of doing perfectly well on its own, unless of course your immune system is suppressed by HIV or leukemia. Our immune system is incapable of responding to the challenges of everyday living, they say. I challenged them on these claims, and they asked if I was a doctor. I told them I was a nurse, to which they said, "So are we." They told me that doctors will prescribe chemotherapy for patients, but will not take it themselves. Interestingly, I discovered that this product has been used in a bizarre combined measles vaccine autism cure, which Andrew Wakefield, he of the great MMR autism debacle, apparently represented. But back to the nurses. They then claimed that the H1N1 vaccine was tainted and poisonous, and that manufacturers knowingly allowed it to be used on the public. When challenged, they responded with tired claims about big pharma and big money. As we continued, they became more and more hostile to our questions. So once again, I came away from the Mind Body Wallet Festival troubled by what I saw being peddled to the public. The New South Wales Health Department's Code of Conduct for Unregistered Health Practitioners was published in September 2008 and states that a healthcare practitioner must display a copy at all premises where the practitioner carries on his or her practice. I did not see a single one on display. Where are the authorities, I ask myself? How is it that these people can continue to promote and sell unproven, disproven, or potentially harmful products and therapies? How is it that a man can claim to be able to heal cancer and HIV, or sell pendants which can turn water into sunscreen? How can a dentist needlessly remove fillings from people's teeth and subject them to a potentially dangerous and unnecessary intervention? How can these same individuals not be held accountable by the authorities for deceiving vulnerable people? I fear that on my next visit to the festival in 6 months' time, nothing will have changed.
Anyway, Richard and Joe. William left us a little while ago. We've finished with the Mind Body Wallet for this 6 months. Joe, you've still got yourself together somehow.
I don't know how. I'm still rather composed. I've had a few moments of almost collapsing into a heap of madness, but I survived.
We had some fun with the guy with his magic herbs that kill cancer cells but don't
cure cancer. Yes, we remember him from last year. I'm sure Dr. Rachie will remember him. And last year he had some interesting ideas. I remember last year he wanted to sell his magic potions for several $1,000s. But interestingly, this year he was saying that you can't buy an individual bottle. You have to buy all 12.
All 12, yeah.
And
did you see that money he was counting?
Oh, he was...
A huge wad of 50s.
He was thumbing through a rather large roll of money. And when pressed on how his treatment worked, he couldn't really tell us too much about anything that made any sense.
Not at all. In fact, a lot of people in there today didn't make much sense at all.
No, they think they make sense in their own heads, but it certainly didn't make much sense to me.
We're all born of pure light. I said, oh, yes.
Yeah, there was a lot of pure light running around in this place today.
And the best, the winning one of the day, although it was stiff competition, was the guy who said that women are getting breast cancer because they sit in front of their computers with bras with underwire. That's the one.
Yep. Yeah, we found a new conspiracy, I think.
A new conspiracy. And these light bulbs that have been given out, the new energy-saving ones, they're going to give us all, what was it, cancer?
Oh, might as well be.
Might as well be. Autism.
Oh, yeah, autism rates have been going up 6,000% since 1940, and it's because of the
dirty electricity.
Oh, the dirty electricity, that's right.
You could have asked them what dirty electricity is.
I don't think we could ask that guy much of all. He was really gone.
No.
Yeah.
And we had the magic pendant, of course, and we both tried that.
Well, Richard was very excited because he wanted to have a go at the magic pendant last year, and he finally did it this year.
Yeah, only to discover that, well, it's the old kinesiology trick. You hold out your hand and they press down. Then they give you the pendant, they press down again. They say, look, you're more powerful or you're less powerful. They simply press harder.
So we had people this year also telling us that we don't need to wear sunscreen.
Yeah.
There's magic water we can spray on our skin instead of sunscreen. That was the same people as the pendants.
You put the pendant, you know how that worked. You put the pendant under a bottle of water for 10 minutes, then you put that on yourself instead of sunscreen.
That's right.
And folks, I actually gave them a lecture. But in the meantime, and I say this most sincerely, I would be most hesitant indeed about telling people to use the all magic water instead of sunblock. That could lead to melanoma, all right? I am telling you as a favour and as a concerned person in society. Magic water is no substitute for sunblock. You must understand that, all right?
I'll keep doing it
Okay?
myself.
That's my advice.
You can keep doing it yourself, but don't tell other
Don't
people.
advise people to use magic water instead of sunblock. Because you could get yourself sued by someone coming back with melanoma. All right? Okay?
All right, that's fine. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
And this was actually someone who said that she sprays this water on her grandchild because she doesn't want to use the chemicals in the sunscreen.
Yeah.
So she's actually subjecting her own grandchild to potentially harm.
Well, we've decided next year, in 6 months' time, we really must come back here with a film crew and somebody from the ACCC or the TGA or I don't know who, because there are claims in there which are
absolutely, and I think one of the things that I found so upsetting today was speaking to a couple of nurses who were claiming that people shouldn't be having chemotherapy for cancer, who were offering all sorts of supplements for boosting people's immune systems.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? They say don't use chemotherapy, but use the stuff we happen to be selling.
The stuff we happen to be selling for which we can furnish no evidence that it actually does anything.
Yeah. Well, that's Mind Body Wallet for you, folks. As I said before, it's worth a visit. It really is worth a visit. And I would go so far as to saying that every medical student should come down and visit this place.
It is. It's an eye-opening experience. And you can nom your way through it if you want to.
You can, actually. We nom some honey popcorn.
Delicious.
Until the next 6 months, goodbye from Mind Body Wallet.
Goodbye.
Yeah, right, guys. I was talking to Richard Saunders the other day.
All right.
He said if we record a trailer for our podcast, Skeptics with a K, he'd play it on their show.
Well, that's nice of him. That's very generous.
It's pretty good. I'm not sure what we could do, though. I mean...
Well, I suppose you tell people what the show's about.
But it's basically just this.
Yeah. But we talk about science and skepticism and things.
That's true. I suppose you mentioned the website address.
What, MerseysideSkeptics.org.uk?
Yeah, or just like search us on iTunes. Oh, and then we could end with like a big song like The Skeptics with a K podcast.
No. Don't do that.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello everyone and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. This week I'm reporting to you from the International Proteolysis Society meeting held last week at Surfers Paradise in Queensland, Australia. As the name suggests, this conference was about the breakdown of proteins in infectious diseases, age-related diseases such as heart disease and many other pathologies. I listened to lectures about scabies, chlamydia, Alzheimer's disease, blood coagulation, and influenza. One of the lectures that was particularly interesting was about developing a vaccine against hookworm infection. Dr. Alex Loukas, who is a parasitologist, was kind enough to give me his time after his seminar. I spoke to Alex by the pool at the Marriott Hotel, where he told me about helminths, parasitology, and pornography. So I'm here with Alex Loukas. Hi, Alex. Welcome to the Skeptic Zone.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you.
You are a parasitologist from Queensland, from the Institute for Medical Research. And what exactly does a parasitologist do?
A parasitologist studies parasites. That's as simple as that. We just look at, there are many different aspects of parasitology, but the one that I'm interested in is what is the molecular basis of how parasites can live a parasitic existence.
Mm-hmm.
What molecules do they secrete that allow them to live inside in this case, a human host.
You're interested in the hookworm or the helminth, aren't you? Which is a hookworm is a part of the helminth family?
Yeah,
is that right?
helminths are worms, and they belong to many different phylogenetic groups. Flatworms, roundworms, tapeworms, they're all helminths.
The hookworms cause a lot of problems, particularly in the developing world. Can you tell us a little bit about what an infection with hookworm would do to a person or an animal for that matter?
Hookworms used to actually be a problem in Australia, in humans in Australia, and even in the 1940s we still had hookworm through Queensland. But a program of increased sanitation and public awareness and therapy with anti-helminthic drugs, so drugs, tablets that kill worms, pretty much took care of Queensland's human hookworm population, but our dogs are still infected. And so if you don't treat your dogs through anywhere in the tropics or north of Brisbane, they'll have hookworm. But it's a different species to the one that infects people. So human hookworms are prevalent in 700-800 million people throughout all the developing countries, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. And the major pathology that hookworms cause is blood loss, and they live in the gut, they suck blood, and they suck a lot of blood. And people who are already malnourished will, if they have a heavy hookworm infection, will develop iron deficiency anemia. So not enough iron in their blood. They become lethargic.
So can you tell us a little bit about their life cycle? You mentioned yesterday in your seminar that you can excrete up to 20,000 eggs in your feces, is that right?
Yeah,
that's how they spread,
and even more, yes. So that's just one female worm. So these worms are separate sexes, they're males and females, they'll sexually reproduce, and the female will lay many, many, many eggs, and the eggs come out in the feces, and they embryonate in the soil, and the little larvae hatch out of the eggs, and then those larvae are the infectious stage that will then penetrate through the skin of anybody who happens to come in contact with them on the soil or grass.
So yesterday you were going to show us a video of what you referred to as pornography for parasitologists, but it didn't work.
No, it was working on the computer screen, but you guys couldn't see it on the projector.
Well, given that this is also an audio-based show, can you explain to us what you were going to show us on that video?
That video was footage taken via a colonoscope, a scope that a gastroenterologist, in this case, inserts up the rectum, and he goes into the small intestine and has a look around and basically sees what's going on in there. And this was a person from Townsville in North Queensland, where there is no longer human hookworm, but this person was actually infected with a dog hookworm. Now, most of us, anyone who's ever spent any time in Queensland or Northern Territory or Northern WA would have been it's a good chance we would have been infected with dog hookworm larvae and we never knew about it. The larvae arrest in our tissues and don't cause any harm whatsoever. But very occasionally it appears that at least one of those larvae will make it to adulthood and they'll become an adult worm residing in the gut, sucking on blood. And occasionally, very occasionally, those worms seem to cause really nasty disease and a very nasty enteritis. But this particular person who I was showing the video footage of, this person was healthy, not sick. They were having an endoscopy for other reasons. But the gastroenterologist found one single hookworm there sucking blood. You know, you could see very clearly, it's a shame the video didn't work, because you could see very clearly where the worm's attached to the gut wall. There was blood leaching out from around the attachment site, and every so often the worm would shoot a puff of blood out its anus. So it just
that sounds charming.
Yeah.
Is that the pornographic
That's the pornographic aspect. Yeah. It would have given you a very visual appreciation for what a very heavy hookworm burden can do in terms of blood loss.
So how many would you possibly be infected with at any one time? I know that would vary, but it's more than one, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, sure. Most people would be infected with a relatively low to moderate infection, which can be anywhere between just a few to 30, 40 worms.
Right.
But people who are heavily infected can have hundreds of worms.
Wow. And you mentioned that they get to about 1 centimetre long, is that right?
Yeah, 1 to 1.2, 1.3 centimetres long is the adult worm. That's how big they are when they're feeding on blood.
So part of your work is involved developing a vaccine against hookworm. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because the mechanism that you're going to be targeting is very interesting. You're going to be targeting an enzyme that helps them break down blood, so therefore they starve. Can you tell us a bit about that?
The way a hookworm digests its blood meal, its food, is very similar to the way we do. We eat food, the proteins in our gut are digested by digestive enzymes. Hookworms do the same thing. They'll suck blood, they secrete molecules that burst the red blood cell open, and then the hemoglobin inside the red blood cell is one of the major food sources for the worm, and then they use a bunch of different enzymes, which we call proteases, to digest the hemoglobin into small peptides or little single amino acids that they can then absorb and use for nutrition. So we're trying to develop a vaccine where we would induce an antibody response in the people who are vaccinated. Those antibodies would be swallowed by the worm when they're sucking on our blood, and those antibodies would then attack the gut of the hookworm where those proteases are secreted and then inhibit the ability of the worm to digest its blood meal, and it would effectively starve.
So essentially the antibody is coming from the human blood source. So you inject the person with the vaccine, they develop the antibodies, and then when the worm ingests that, that's when they can't make food out of the haemoglobin anymore.
It's kind of like a poison. We use the analogy of the poison chalice. Or, and it's so the worms are doing what they want to do, and they're having a blood meal just like a mosquito would.
Yeah.
But that blood meal is laced with antibodies that are going to start attacking the worm's own gut.
You mentioned before that there's a vaccine for dogs. Is that based on this sort of technology, or is that very different?
It's very different. That vaccine is no longer available, but was available in the 70s. It was actually developed in the mid to late 60s, and that was a vaccine that's more like the vaccines that we all get against viruses and some bacteria. That's called an attenuated parasite vaccine. So for that vaccine, they took the larval stage, the stage that infects through the skin, and they gave them a dose of radiation, and that stops the parasites from being able to further develop, but they stay alive. And so when the dogs were injected with those attenuated parasites, they stimulated an immune response. The immune response was able to kick in and protect the dogs, but those larvae could not develop once they were inside the dog.
Was that technology not able to be applied to humans? Why is it that we've never had that vaccine available to humans?
Yeah, it's a good question. That approach would almost certainly work for a human vaccine, but we're talking about a disease here of developing countries where the costs in producing it and administering it need to be really, really low. And making a vaccine where you would have to culture trillions and trillions of hookworm larvae to irradiate them and get them out to developing countries is just completely unfeasible economically.
Right, okay.
So it's a cost.
It's a cost factor.
It's a cost issue,
yeah. Okay.
We have to keep things as low as possible.
So the aim of the vaccine, of course, is to stop people becoming anemic, and is that the main aim of it?
Yes. If you can reduce blood loss, it doesn't matter if you've got a few hookworms in your gut, so long as you are not suffering significant blood loss, then people don't really know they're infected, and they won't suffer any illness other than the blood loss associated with heavy infections.
So this work that you're doing, Alex, is in collaboration with some other people as well. I know that you're getting some funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who have become very active in funding research for the developing world. Where else in the world is this research being done?
So this is our Gates-funded program is a multi-centre initiative. Our colleagues in Washington, D.C. at George Washington University are really the central point. They manage it all. And we have colleagues in Brazil, which is where we do our field work and our clinical trials. Colleagues in London. So this is sort of all over the world, really.
Yeah. Well, good luck with the development of the vaccine, Alex. And thank you for taking time to talk to us today.
You're welcome.
I look forward to hearing about the progress of a vaccine for hookworm. Thanks to Alex for joining us. And stay tuned, listeners, for in the next few weeks I'll have more reports from the International Proteolysis Society meeting, this time about new therapies for malaria. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
AstronomyCast takes a facts-based journey through the cosmos as it offers listeners weekly discussions on astronomical topics ranging from planets to cosmology. Hosted by Fraser Kane of Universe Today and myself, Dr. Pamela Gay of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, this show brings the questions of an avid astronomy lover directly to an astronomer. Together, Fraser and I explore what is known and being discovered about the universe around us. Join us each week as we take a facts-based journey through the cosmos at astronomycast.com.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
Well, cheers everybody. Welcome once again to the Think Tank.
Cheers.
Now listen, we must, before I introduce everybody, we must sincerely thank Alyssa Goldberg from New York, who has sent us some money to buy us the drinks we are now drinking. Thank you, Alyssa.
Thanks to Alyssa. Good health to Alyssa.
And my other recorder's just fallen off the table. It's really great to have Dr. Rachie back in the country from your adventures overseas, visiting the USA, Miami.
I did
Florida.
visit Miami, yes.
Yeah, had a good time?
Yeah, it was interesting. The conference was very, very good. It was about ALS, or otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Ah.
Lots of American listeners would remember Lou Gehrig. He was a...
the sporting hero, yes?
Yes.
Baseball.
Baseball.
Thank you. She's doing this javelin movement.
I've been off a plane for 12 hours and I didn't sleep much.
You got off the plane today, didn't you?
I got off this morning.
Oh, you poor thing, yeah.
So, listeners might remember me banging on about the bats and the connection between the Guam Indigenous people eating bats and getting an early onset ALS like Parkinson's syndrome. Well, the conference was about that, so that was fascinating.
And it's very good to see that the chief investigator from Australian Skeptics, Ian Bryce, is back with us from your interesting trips overseas. Now, you've been to Korea, China, Tibet.
Yes, indeed. The first week was the International Astronautics Congress in South Korea, where I gave a couple of papers on rocket science, which is how I earned the money, so that was interesting.
According to your shirt you're wearing at the moment, rocket scientist, yes.
And then I went to Kathmandu, where I was an invited speaker at a young humanists conference.
Wow.
That had a few connections with skeptics. Then I flew to Tibet.
Yeah.
And after that, back through China.
Good heavens.
And then Hong Kong and back to Australia. So I've seen a fair bit of Asia in this trip.
What an adventure. What an adventure. And it's a big welcome to Joanne Benhamu.
Thank you, Richard.
Who's back from the wild, as you would have heard earlier in the show, of course, the wild and woolly, amazing mind trip that is Mind, Body, Spirit.
Yes, and I feel a little bit like Dr. Rachie at the moment. I actually feel jet-lagged after that experience.
Somehow I'm not surprised. Good to see you, Joe.
Thank you.
Now, look, before we get started into some of the topics that our friends have brought along to the think tank tonight, let me mention that the Australian Skeptics are now regulars. It's very, very pleasing. Regulars on Radio 2GB here in Sydney, which is, I think, the foremost commercial radio network in Sydney.
Radio station 2GB is actually named after Giordano Bruno, who was burnt at the stake by the Catholic Church for promoting skepticism about 400 years ago.
You're absolutely
one of
right.
our heroes.
You're absolutely right. 2GB, that's where the G and the B come from. And 2 is the radio desert, New South Wales, the state we're in at the moment. Anyway, an old friend of mine, Glenn Wheeler, who's a radio announcer and a very good host, has a new show on Saturday nights, and he invited me to come along and see if we couldn't have a skeptical input. And our listeners would have heard the first episode with Rachie and I, Dr. Rachie and I. Subsequently, I've been back to do another one. I did a pre-record this afternoon, and I think we're even back this Saturday night, so it's going very well. A big thank you to Glenn Wheeler, who has a very sharp mind, a very skeptical mind at heart, and that's very gratifying and good fun, isn't it, Rachie?
It's great fun. And it's also interesting that that time slot used to be filled by a psychic show.
It did.
For 12 years, actually. And it was recently... the radio station decided to just sort of shuffle around their format a little bit, just to experiment, and they filled the spot with
Glenn
us.
Wheeler. Well,
Glenn Wheeler. Well, yeah,
Glenn Wheeler, who invited us along, and Glenn has a sort of a mixed bag of entertainment and songs and things. It's very good. It's very good indeed.
It's great fun.
Apart from your wonderful report from the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, Joe. And that was quite an experience, wasn't it? I mean, my goodness me.
Yes, we went to one. We went to the last one in Sydney 6 months ago, and I think I went along this time. Last one was my first one, so this one I knew what I was in for.
But we both, I must say, that this time we both let our not guard down, but our normal reserve down.
Exactly. I think last time we went, and Dr. Rachie was there with us that time.
Yes.
We went more with the idea of really just asking questions in a less obviously presenting ourselves as skeptics, I guess. We just went in there sort of a bit innocently to just talk, see what people said, and not really challenge people too much. And I think that for me anyway, my very first encounter just... I really couldn't.
You were
take
shell-shocked.
I was really...
Dr. Rachie, a year or year and a half ago, that was your experience, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You were shaking. You were absolutely
so angry
shaking.
that I was shaking.
Yeah.
And I had to be shuffled off into the corner by you and made to calm down.
I remember,
Yeah, I mean, we were there for all of 5 minutes, and the very first stall I went up to, I walked away from. In fact, I almost was manhandled out of the stall for simply questioning why it's necessary to remove.
Isn't it interesting? In all the years I've gone there, the one thing I've noticed is they don't know how to react properly to questions.
No, because people don't ask them.
People don't ask questions. How does it work? Are you sure it works? What if we test it? These are outside their experience. It's fascinating. You've been, haven't you, into the Mind, Body, Spirit?
Yeah, I have indeed, yes.
Yeah.
A different world altogether. One thinks that the laws of science must be different there than the rest of the world.
Science? Science? What's that?
Well, that actually depends. Sorry, Jo.
No, you go.
That depends on what suits them, Richard. They'll use the science if it suits their cause.
Oh,
if
yeah.
it doesn't suit their cause, they dismiss
it. In fact,
everyone's using quantum theory, right?
Exactly, and in fact, I did notice this year that the use of scientific terminology seemed to be more blatant than
I have a
previous
bag full of flyers and leaflets, actually. From the... Oh, here we go. Here's a favourite of yours, Dr. Rachie.
Oh, God.
Hemaview.
Live blood analysis.
Blood analysis.
We had a run-in with these people the very first time I went, I think, because they claimed it was scientifically tested, didn't they? And when we asked them for evidence, they
got really
asked
angry.
if we were doctors or if we were from the government.
Yeah. Reconnective healing.
Oh, reconnective healing, that was an interesting one.
Yeah.
We had just the most fascinating experience talking to these people where, they claim that by waving their hands over you, they can heal you and so on. And it's the usual stuff of just about every other, therapeutic touch and Reiki and all of them. And when we actually challenged them and said, look, we offered them the Australian Skeptics $100,000 challenge and said to them that it would be quite simple to test their claims and their response to us was that they couldn't see why they should do a simple test when it made far more sense to do a very complicated one, given that their treatment is very complicated. So at that point, Richard and I just shook our heads and walked away.
Yeah, but at least we gave them the card.
Yes.
And we also gave our card to the Fusion XL with their quantum pendant that turns normal drinking water into sunblock.
And then you rub it on your skin and it blocks the sun's rays.
That's their claim.
The lady who was helping run the stall, she told us that she uses this on her grandchildren because she doesn't want to expose them to the nasty chemicals in sunscreen.
Well, of course, there's no problem with skin cancer in Australia, right?
No, not at all.
Water on your
not at all.
Well, in fact, as Dr. Rachie brought to my attention last time, the New South Wales Department of Health now has, and has had for quite a long time actually, a code of conduct for unregistered, non-registered health practitioners, health professionals, whatever they call themselves. And it's mandatory that they display this code of conduct anywhere where they carry out their treatments.
Yes,
and
how many did you play?
I played code of conduct bingo. And Rachel, how many hands can you count on? Which I found.
Guess, Rachel. Guess how many had the code of conduct up.
And wait, let me use Richard's little. It rhymes with 0.
Isn't that surprising?
I was shocked.
That is right up there in the very beginning of the Code of Conduct, which was introduced in August 2008 by the Health Department of New South Wales, which is an amendment to the Public Health Act of 1981, clearly saying that you must display this wherever you are doing alternative health practitioner treatments. Yeah.
But the point is, do you think they care? Do you think they actually care?
Well, it doesn't matter if they care because no one's policing it. So what's the
I'm sorry. When I said do you think they care? I mean the health authorities.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant the practitioners.
Oh, they don't care, but the health authorities don't care.
I think the health authorities have probably got
they have other things
to deal with. I think given the state of
this would be a goldmine of prosecutions for them.
Yeah, but they don't have the
resources.
Staff, the resources. They don't have it.
Well, then we're forced to turn to tabloid television,
which is unfortunate because, in fact, the worst thing about the tabloid television is that one week they'll be condemning it and the next week they'll be promoting it.
Well, what they'll probably do, if they do the story at all, they will find people who think it works. But try telling that to Myrtle Scroggins, who says it cured her.
Well, I mean,
I always do stories like that, though.
Well, maybe I'm being unfair.
I mean, I think one of the things that I really feel bothered by is, we're very conscious of the fact that there's certain language that these people avoid using to avoid getting in trouble.
Oh, the guy with the cancer.
Yeah, we talked about him before, and they'll never use words like cure, but they will happily use words like treat
or kill
or heal.
He said this stuff kills cancer cells.
And in fact, this is a guy who we've discussed before, and I've written about before, and he, I know he's one of the ones that makes Dr. Rachie almost explode. And this is a guy who's selling a mixture of various potions that he claims will kill the cancer cells. And when I challenged him on this, and I said to him, "So you're telling me that that this can cure cancer?" And his sidekick sidled up to me, and they both sort of wagged their fingers at me and said, "Oh no, that's not what we're saying. It will kill the cancer cells, but no. We never said that. We never said it would cure the cancer." So they're really, really careful.
And you push them. You push them on.
I did push them on. And I guess the thing that bothers me is, I mean, really, it's just splitting hairs. I mean, you cannot tell me that a naive person who walks up to these people and sees them using words like heal and treat are not going to associate that with
and
cure.
AIDS. And AIDS too.
Oh yes, AIDS as well as cancer.
Too. But wasn't it interesting, Joe, that when we were there was a woman next to us also listening to what this guy said, and she was actually asking questions.
It was really interesting, actually.
And we twigged, didn't we?
We did. We were listening to what she was saying, and very, very quickly we could tell that this was someone who was actually asking questions because they knew there was something fishy going on. And in fact, we then sort of were spurring each other on as we were questioning him. And then when we walked away, she actually asked what we were there for, and she said that she had a friend who had cancer and who had started taking all manner of bizarre treatments that had been pushed on him by people. So very sad.
But speaking of testing, Joe,
yes.
I've got an article here which we discussed over dinner, which is about complementary medicine.
Oh, yes.
And it was released on the 9th of November, and it's talking about the fact that the EU, or the European Union, is now going to be funding €1.5 million, or 2.25 million Australian dollars, worth of research into CAM.
Yes, that's an utter waste of money.
Well, it's going to be a 3-year project, and it's going to be called Cambrella.
Yes.
How ingenious.
Oh. I mean,
what? Richard's just spat champagne out his nose. Cambrella?
Because it's,
it's covering
it's a complementary
the whole
alternative medicine umbrella.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't want to immediately sound like I'm sneering at the idea of doing research into alternative treatments, because as we know, doing research into things tells us when things perhaps do work. But as we know, the research has already been done.
Well, that's right.
I mean,
the
what's new? What's new under the sun when it comes to CAM?
No, there's nothing new. I mean, it's not that we're poo-pooing the idea of investigating claims, but when the claims have all been looked at when things like homeopathy have been unquestionably completely thrown out as having any evidence base whatsoever, why invest money in this?
Well, I mean, on top of that, the National Centre for Complementary and Alternative Medicine, which is set up by the NIH, they spent something like $2.5 billion in the last few years researching CAM, and what did they come up with?
Nothing.
What does it rhyme with, Richard?
It rhymes with hero.
Yeah, so they came up with no efficacy on all of the complementary modalities that they looked at. But this is going to be a group which is going to be run from Germany. The funny thing is, I think it was Scott Hurst on Twitter yesterday. He obviously had a brain explosion. And he just tweeted, "Why is it that all the research into CAM is not being paid for by the practitioners or the people involved, and it never is.
No.
I mean, this is the EU, the NCCAM.
Well, I think I've got a little.
It is a very good point.
But I think I've got a little bit of a possible answer for why that is. What was our experience at Mind Body Wallet? Every time we questioned anyone,
they would say
on doing research into their treatment, they would throw it back on us that it was somehow up to us to show that their treatment didn't work.
Yeah.
It was not up to them to show that it did.
Anyone attending the ACE Awards in the Starlight Auditorium, could you kindly make your way through as the show is about to recommence? That's the ACE Awards in the auditorium. Could you kindly make your way through as the show is about to commence? Thank you.
Well, it's not a bus announcement, but it's the next best thing, I guess. Go on.
I think that really they just simply don't actually think they have to demonstrate efficacy.
But you know what's convenient about that, Joe, is that, for example, with homeopathy, I just repeated myself, apologies.
Say it again.
She's jet lagged.
She's jet lagged, folks.
You know what's interesting about that, Joe, is that... I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh, with homeopathy, people will say... Practitioners will say, but we haven't done enough testing yet. You know, they'll say there's only been 200 years, but we need to do more testing. When do you stop that? After 200 years of scientific experiments, they then decide that hasn't been enough. But then you're telling me that they say we don't want to do that because we don't need to do that. So,
or they'll bleat about how much money real medicine makes.
Exactly.
And didn't we tell some people, could have been those nurses or whatever.
It was
those nurses who were peddling rubbish. That we said to them, but don't you realise how much money alternative medicine makes? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
In the Skeptics, I was investigating a fuel polarising device produced by an inventor called Norman Dodge. Consisted of very strong magnets that you clamped around the fuel line of your car, and it saved you 30% of fuel and reduced your emissions and so forth. And I said, Norman, what evidence have you got that these magnets do anything to the fuel? And he said, well, he reached in his bag and pulled out a couple of magnets and said, look, they're so strong, they must do something.
What?
So that to him was evidence.
I just have to say, though, in support of the fact that pharmaceutical companies make a lot of money, and no one denies that.
Yeah.
No one denies.
Of course they do.
A lot of people deny that CAM does.
Joe, this is a huge blue newspaper almost you've got. What's this all about?
Oh, well, my husband actually picked this up at Central Station today, and it seems like the Scientologists are hard at work trying to get their propaganda out there at the moment.
It's like a big...
It looks like a little newspaper.
Clear mind.
Clear body.
Clear body.
Mind. It's all about the Scientology purification rundown.
They've taken a few hits of late, haven't
they? They have. So I wonder whether they're...
and their lead article is by L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh, is he still alive? Is he perhaps
You'd think
in
so.
the area? Can we maybe summon him?
Well, I tell you, I've got here a little questionnaire that the Scientologists want to ask us.
Oh, yes.
The Scientologists want to know, how toxic are you?
Ooh, okay.
Take this test and find out.
Well, why don't we all take this survey? Ready?
Let's
do it.
Okay. Have you felt fatigue now and then for no apparent reason?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel wooden or lifeless?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you ever experienced drug flashbacks?
Wait a second. What?
Yes.
All right, let's leave that off.
We'll leave
yes, all right.
Do you feel less alert than you used to?
Yes,
Jet lag, so
certainly.
yes.
Do you sometimes get a feeling of lightheadedness or a feeling of being spaced out?
Can I have another glass of champagne?
Yeah, that would be it.
Thank you.
Yep, count me in.
Yes.
Do you feel irritable without reason or cause?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have unexplained aches and pains?
Ouch!
Certainly.
Yes.
Do you find it difficult to get excited about people and things?
Yes.
Yes. Do you find you feel anxious but don't know why?
Yes.
Do you have trouble learning new things even when you're interested in them?
Can you repeat that?
Do you...
Come on, move on.
Wow.
Yes.
Well then,
Yes.
you've answered yes to all these questions,
Yes.
then you'll
So what
be
do we
just
need?
right.
An
You need
e-meter?
the purification rundown.
Woohoo! Ian, what do you have to tell us about your amazing adventures?
Okay, a couple of things over there. Part of the purpose of holding the conference in Nepal was...
Which conference was that again?
It's the International Humanist and Ethical Youth Organisation,
right.
IHEO.
Oh.
And The International Humanist Group runs a program in Nepal to try and improve life in the villages, and the main purpose is to eliminate superstition. And they've got a travelling group that goes around performing magic for the kids and basically duplicating the tricks of all the god men who claim to be able to run the lives of the children.
Listeners may well go to Google and type in Guru Busters. Guru Busters. There's a video which is by the Indian rationalists who go around busting the god men. Well worth a look.
Yes, well, this particular group goes to schools in the outlying villages of Nepal and demonstrates to the kids, do a little song and dance, a few magic tricks, teach the kids some magic tricks to take home, and hopefully proofs them against superstitious beliefs so they can improve their future with a scientific outlook.
Lovely.
Very much like our local
mystery
investigators.
You've heard of them, Dr. Rachie?
Never.
Oh, okay.
There was early snow in Beijing towards early November this year when I was there, and the Chinese government attributed that snow to their snow-making activities. Their aeroplanes that dropped silver iodide crystals in the clouds.
I remember them talking about that during the Olympics. They were talking about how they were going to be
Australia's CSIRO was trying to do that about 50 years ago and concluded that there was no evidence that their activities made any difference to the rainfall and snowfall, that being a random event anyway. But anyway, the Chinese are claiming that there is a connection there. Maybe they're right. Scientific evidence would be the way to tell. And finally, we heard about the Iraqi security forces, as the NATO forces are withdrawing, who have been buying bomb-detecting devices which operate on the same principle as water divining.
Oh, yes.
This is quite a big story at the moment.
About as well.
$27 million they've spent on them so far, on these devices that you wave over the car, and then it's entirely up to the operator whether he senses that there's that the machine's telling him there's a bomb in the car or not.
It's not dangerous at all, is it?
This is the dark side of the same thinking behind water divining. Listeners may also wish to visit the website of the James Randi Educational Foundation, where James Randi has reposted an article about this he made a few years ago, where he actually just says, this is fake, fraud, it doesn't work. Very sad. Anyway, well, thank you everybody for coming along. What a fascinating think tank it was, most enjoyable. I must once again thank Alyssa Goldberg in New York.
Thank you, Alyssa.
We've consumed your bottle of champagne.
I think Richard's consumed most of it.
He had to test that it was all okay.
I did.
From the beginning to the end.
The skeptical investigation of the bottle of champagne. I
wonder if I met Alyssa in New York. I don't know if I met Alyssa.
Alyssa, please write to Dr. Rachie, which is, what's your email address at the Skeptic Zone?
Rachel at skepticzone.tv.
That is.
Otherwise, I'm going to be in New York in a few weeks. So,
yes.
Joe.
You can catch up with Alyssa and buy her a drink back.
Listeners in New York, please visit. And London.
Yes.
Visit the Skeptic Zone website.
And Chicago.
Anywhere else?
Baltimore.
I did ask. Please visit the Skeptic Zone website, look for the contact pages, and you can write to Jo. She's going to be travelling every major city in the world, it seems. And you can meet Jo Benhamu from the Skeptic Zone podcast. Well, look, no, it's a fabulous think tank. I've really enjoyed it. No bus announcements, but you can't have them all. You can't have it all. Thank you very much, Jo, for coming along tonight.
Thank you, Richard.
From the other side of the harbour.
The other side.
Yes. Thank you, Ian Bryce, for coming along.
Welcome.
And Dr. Rachie, battling jet lag because she just got off the plane this morning from Miami.
Look at my ankles.
And she's been nommed by Miami mosquitoes.
My feet are covered in scabs and my ankles are swollen.
That's incredible.
It's disgusting.
There's about, 30 mosquito bites on her foot, we can see?
On 1 foot alone.
On 1 foot. And her ankles are swollen from
She's
the
obviously
fight.
very tasty.
I think so.
My Twitter friends have seen the pictures.
Yes. Spectacular pictures.
What's your Twitter again, Dr. Rachie?
Dr. Rachie.
At Dr. Rachie, you are?
I'm at Jo Benhamu, Benhamu.
And I don't think Ian Bryce has Twitter. And
But he has a website called worldtruthday.org.
Worldtruthday.org. And the Skeptic Zone is, of course, Twitter at Skeptic Zone. And until the next think tank, it's cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you. Is there any more left?
That was just an excuse to drink more.
Is that all? Is that empty?
Yes. Why do you think it's...
This is Desiree Schell, host of Skeptically Speaking. Check out our website at skepticallyspeaking.com and listen to us live on CJSR 88.5 FM in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I now return you to the Skeptic Zone.
Thank you very much for listening to The Skeptic Zone. Next week, a very interesting series of interviews. Dr. Rachie, on her recent trip to Florida, caught up with Phil Plait, Phil Plait's mother, DJ Grothy, and James Randi. That's next week on the show. Worth waiting for. And don't forget, if you want to subscribe to The Skeptic Zone, it only costs you 99 cents an episode. Only if you want to. You can do that via www.skepticzone.tv. Until next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.